either from a personal level or from a group level or from an organizational level. Frank, please go a little bit forward and see and drop. Yes, the topic is there, emotional intelligence. The focus is how to drive performance and profit with data-driven emotional intelligence. Yes, but yes, okay, thank you, Frank. It says my achievement will end up with gaining skills, knowledge, and ability. Yes, that capacity to bring progress into a system. That's what Frank wants to live with. I'm expecting others in the room will also drop some form of salutation and what they want to live with. Let me just, log into your location. Let's know where you're joining it from. Femi, I'm looking forward to you dropping a line. The same too with Hajara. Please, where are you joining us from? It helps to know. And others who are in the room will also know how to network and see the opportunity to relate with everyone who is in the room. Sometimes you come into a webinar like this, you have answers, you have questions, you have visions for which some of the participants in the webinar can be of use and of relationship, of a professional network to you. But you really don't know where they are coming from. You don't know where they are connecting us from. And so such opportunity like this is just to help us also connect, help us understand that, look, I'm plugging in to someone from Tanzania. Now I know I have Frank from Tanzania in this room. And I have to start seeing the possibility of exploring this relationship and make it better. And that is the purpose of this very friendly, very informal dropping of locations and names. Just help us see how best to leverage this network. I'm looking forward to 1 or 2% dropping before I invite our lead discussant. Okay, fine. Femi Ogunle is joining us from Abuja. And for Femi says, nice to be here. My first session with your organization. Thank you, Femi, for joining us. I hope to learn how to improve productivity and emotional connection with people. Okay, Femi, you are here. And believe you me, that is what this webinar is for. This session is strictly how to see how to expand this environment, not just to improve productivity, but to also measure that productivity. Because whatever you cannot measure, you cannot improve. Ajara Yusuf says, I am joining from Abuja, Nigeria. Indeed, Ajara. And I hope you also will go a little bit further to drop why you are here. In the next 4 minutes, I will be inviting one person I have come to respect so much, and that is Vicky Karuga. You know, I've not known her for so long, but the quality of value she brings to the table for me has been quite impressive. And the reason for that, for most of you who know what I do most, which has been around the mind transformation and the rest, a lot has been left unsaid and seriously undone within the space of the mind, especially with the focus of emotional intelligence. Not just from the place of identifying or allocating some kind of emotional regulations, but I really mean from the point of being very scientific about it, measuring how emotions affect a person, how emotions affect a relationship, how emotions affect an organization, and how emotions has a direct bearing to what you get and your return on investment, especially in a process. And she has been at the forefront of providing not just the training, not just the intelligence, the both theoretical and practical element of this. Our strength has been that she has even gone further to curate and lead, the availability of very valid assessment that can really guide you, see how this result can be achieved. And the difference between a scientific back process and just one of those accidents is that you can't repeat one of those. You just did it and it worked. And someone asks you, how did you do it? it's almost difficult to really come out and say, this is how I did it. It will be, okay, we just tried something and it worked. But what makes the assessment, especially psychometric, assessment that are really valid and are really scientifically backed with benchmarks, is that you have a pattern that if you take it elsewhere, the parameter may not be exactly the same, but it will still provide you with a baseline for you to see the same result. So what you see happening in Kenya, if you apply it in Tanzania, you will get the same result. If you apply it in Nigeria, you're getting the same result. If you apply it in Ghana, you are getting the same result. And that is what makes the entire process different from what is available in the market. And that is why I'm super excited knowing that being in this room today with what you're living with, you will surely bring some very strong value into the system. So without much ado, I had promised that by 6:15, Vicky is going to come on board and then just lead us through this beautiful journey. So Vicky, the stage is clear for you. And I want everyone in the room, please, by way of show of welcoming, whether you're using the fire emoji, whatever you're using to welcome, please help me welcome Vicky Karuga. She has been the face championing this in Africa. She's doing something extremely very phenomenal. And we're really trying to show that Nigerians plug into the progress of performance, so the progress of both organizational development that is consistent, that can be replicated, that can also be measured. Thank you, Vicky, for joining us. Please, the floor is open. Can you lead the house? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Victor, and thank you for everyone who's here on this call. It's my pleasure to be here with you and to discuss this topic about emotional economy. So I will start by asking a question around, as I always ask, and I'm just going to try and get to my chat right now. How many feelings do you think you have felt today? I'm looking at the chat and I'm seeing we have a few people who said they've joined us from Abuja, Nigeria. We have Abuja, we have one from Tanzania, very welcome. So I wanted to share with me, how many feelings do you feel you have felt today, the whole of today from morning? What's that number? Just share with me on the chat. Try and get your messages. I'm just trying to get your messages. I haven't seen anything yet. Let me see if I can get one person sharing how many. Are they 2? Are they 5? Are they 10? Are they 15? Are they 1,000? Oh, we have four emotions. Then we have, I had a good feeling in the morning, but the afternoon it changed to bad. So 2 feelings, if I can put them. I have Victor saying 8 feeling. And I can't read that fast, saying 5 feelings. So we have a range between 4, 5, 8, and then we have like 1 major feeling in the morning and 1 major feeling in the afternoon. So the whole point of that exercise is to bring awareness to the fact that sometimes we may not be as emotionally aware as we really should be. If you think about the fact that you can remember about 4 or 5 feelings, or you can remember you had a good feeling in the morning, but in the evening it wasn't that great, or afternoon. And then I've just seen someone said, I had quite a lot. It was quite a lot of feelings. We feel a lot of feelings. And the truth about feelings is we cannot take them for granted, and we can't ignore them. And science now shows us that emotions are responsible for a lot of our actions and a lot of our decisions. So if you say you felt 4 feelings or 5 feelings or 8 feelings, my next question to you will be, can you name them? Can you put down in words, I felt this in the morning, I felt this mid-morning, I felt this. And the naming of emotions is how we start growing in emotional awareness, which is part of self-awareness. So emotional intelligence starts with recognizing our emotions. It starts by being deliberate about naming them, about understanding how they show up, even physiologically, and then understanding the behaviors associated with them. What do we do when we feel them? And it is only through that path of intentional cultivation of emotional awareness that we start seeing how we react to emotions. For example, we start noticing that when we don't like someone, what do? We avoid them. We walk the other way when we see them. And that is a decision. The decision of avoiding someone is driven by an emotion. But a lot of the times we don't think about it because we just say, I don't like this person. I'm limiting the time that I have with them. And that's it. And your mind ends it there. And you can keep giving yourself those answers all the time. But the truth is, sometimes some of these relationships are essential to our lives. So you could be avoiding a boss and limiting the times that you interact with them, because you don't want to spend too much time with them because it is difficult. And on the other coin is you could be realizing that your manager or your boss is instrumental in your career. One, if you have them aligned to your side, it means that your things go smoother. Two, if you're a hard worker, it means that you get recognition when you have a better relationship. Three, they speak your room in names you will sometimes not be. And so therefore, it means that they will be your biggest champions. So when you see how the emotion that you feel towards your manager forces a certain reaction upon you, which is not working, we start really understanding how emotions can keep us going in a certain path. And all the while, we probably say we don't have a good boss, and therefore that's why we're not progressing, and that's why our career is not growing. But we always have a choice. And they say that emotions, you can control the behavior and the reaction you have to an emotion as long as you're aware of it. So as long as you're aware that when you see this bad boss or difficult boss, there's a certain emotion you feel. And this emotion does not drive you to want to speak to this boss. It actually drives you to want to get away from them and therefore hampers the productive relationship that you could have with this manager. So what do? And hereby is where we realize what we call the emotional economy. The emotional economy, and I'll ask Rose to share. Rose, if you can share the slides now. It's all about how we utilize emotions significantly in our day-to-day lives. And we see it all the time. We see, Rose, are you sharing the slides? Just let me find out if Rose is sharing the slides. Rose, please confirm.
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. So you see every single time that what happens is that you could put full you could put slideshow. Thanks. So we can go to the next slide.
Sorry, Vicky, I didn't get your question.
Next slide. Passing next slide. Thank you. So we find that as much as we might not think that emotions are something we have control over or that we can change the narrative around. We just have to think about emotions and how they're being used today. And we look at something like the influence on emotions on consumer behavior. I mean, it's a pretty interesting thing how marketers have found a way to be able to utilize and understand the emotions that are a certain thing. So when they do market to you, they play certain things. Because I have gone through the data and I realized that red cars elicit certain emotions in men, and in women, they elicit certain emotions. Black cars are elegant, mysterious, they elicit certain emotions. A girl on a car elicits certain emotions from a man, even if he's not aware of it. When he sees a car with a woman on it, certain emotions are evoked from his body, even if he's not aware of it. And he will start looking at that car in a different way as if we look at a car when it was alone. So it's about thinking about things like that, that even from a very basic experience, when you look at a billboard, it is appealing to your emotions. Yeah. And when we see that you are, for example, when we realize that this is like COVID time, when all of us were at risk of us, we were scared and frightened because we didn't know what tomorrow held. Most of the adverts tried to make themselves sell safe message, sell a protection message. And so they tried to make people feel, we're all in this together. And they even became caring. They're like, put on your masks, a social distance. Every single brand was preaching that, becoming what we call socially responsible. And we felt some sort of kindred spirit. They were playing to our emotions. And some of them were doing it with great intention. Others were doing it because, they know the art. And so anything that would bring about the feeling of safety, including colors, was used during COVID. When we noticed that there's a certain bright, overheightened optimism because of maybe there's been a boom in the economy and things like that, we know that you as a consumer will feel more financially secure. And so what do? We give you adverts that are bolder. We give you adverts that sometimes even border on reckless. And that is why for a certain class of people, we don't just give them normal adverts. We give them adverts that test the limits. And in them, we're playing with the emotions because we're saying, sure, you have all this. Can't you just move a little bit further? And it plays to my need to grow as a human being or to be seen as significant. And so we find that marketers and businesses, especially nowadays, have really studied the art of emotions. So the question here to ask yourself is if everyone is looking for your attention and they are significantly and intentionally playing towards the emotions they elicit from you, then why aren't you paying attention to your own emotions? Because if someone else can manipulate your emotions for you, then what about you, who is the owner of this body and all the physiological processes in it? How much more can you then be able to use emotions intelligently to work for you instead of against you? Yeah. And so when we think about consumer insights, let's think about them from the point of how can I utilize the information around how businesses are using emotions to influence consumer behavior? How can I use those tactics? How can I even go to ChatGPT and tell them what are some of these things that I could use myself to influence my behavior? Because chances are that then most of the time you're not aware of your emotions and you're being driven by your emotions to places sometimes that maybe you find yourself and you're not taking full ownership of the outcome. And the next slide, Rose. So think about that for one. Yeah. The next slide, Rose, if you can change the next slide. Talks about emotional engagement in business strategies. Yeah. And one of the things that we have come to understand here is that the best strategic thinkers are actually emotional thinkers. They don't think about something as purely rational. They want to get into their intuition. They want to feel about that decision. And feeling means that they're getting in touch with the emotions behind what they want to make the decision on. And also they're getting to get the feel of all the people around us. So emotional engagement in business becomes really key because one, if we are leading people, we understand that people are not machines. They feel, and these feelings dictate their behavior, they dictate even their performance. If they are in an environment that is driven by toxic emotions, what tends to happen is they don't enjoy it. And so, therefore, the productivity that we get from these circumstances is not the same and shall not be equal to the productivity we get from a place where there's a cultivation of more positive and emotions. But now let's bring it back again to ourselves. Yeah, we said we want to be better at our workplace. Thinking about you as a person, if you were to be looked at as a center, what kind of environment do you create around you? If you create an environment where people feel empowered, where people feel like you have been empathetic towards them, where people feel that they are encountering someone authentic, if you create that sort of environment where people feel driven and where people feel like they have been pushed to boundaries of exploration and they have been asked to even reach the limits of their potential, they when they feel that from a person, they tend to engage more with that particular person, really. And so, even you as a person, what skills are you empowering yourself with in this world of emotional economy that speak to understanding why emotional intelligence is important? The skill of empathy. Are you learning the skill of empathy? Are you doing a thorough self-awareness check so that you show up more often than not authentic? Um, are you also trying to invest in yourself so that you can also come up as resilient and be able to self-manage better so that you become a positive center? And for business, realizing this has meant that most businesses are now moving from the compliance-driven businesses and they're moving to more the human-driven or human-centered businesses and values. So what do I mean by that? You'll find the values are changing from results to more like client services are number one thing. Our people are our number one thing. We want to practice empathy. We want leadership to influence, and so on and so forth. So we find that even in business, the values that we took so far in the previous years as to be the truth, now we find we want other values that are more human-centered. And even in business and strategy, we're beginning to ask questions like, what is the purpose of this business? Why does it exist? What is the impact it will have? Because those questions mean that people will get locked on more in a business more than it is when you just talk about profits. Rose, you can move to the next slide. As Rose moves to the next slide, what's the next thing we see when it comes to the emotional economy? Rose, I'm waiting for you. So what about case study? Successes and challenges. So one of the case studies we find is of an organization in India that had a guy called Vinaya, and he came on board as the managing director of this particular organization. It wasn't doing very well. And what did he do? He created a culture that centered itself on the employee. In fact, it was so centered on the employee, sometimes people felt like the only thing that mattered is what the employee did. They had quite the leeway when it came to their work times and things like that. Of course, they also had a matrix on how results were delivered. But from the point that Vinit walked in, he sold the purpose, the real reason why the business was there. And he communicated and communicated and communicated over and over again that the employee was king and the customers were queen. So they came first. And because they came first, they were able to serve the clients that they had very, very well. And the result of that was a business that really grew and turned around. And if you look at such businesses, because it's not the only one, research tells us that when a leader comes into an organization who has defined purpose and who can communicate that purpose, he has a vision and he can communicate that vision with clarity. He can show us where we're going, show us why we're going, and show us how we will get there. So all we have to do us here is to think about, okay, so if I talk to you, I can actually get there. If I collaborate with you, I can actually get there. So we find that people find a reason to connect with each other so that they can fulfill a purpose. That is one case study. We also have another case study here in Kenya where we did a lot of work on emotional intelligence, and the business wanted to move from compliance to human centricity. And we found that this was a business in the financial sector. One of the things that we got when that sort of intentional move started was people are saying things like, we've grown by 150% in business. Why? Because now we are conflicting better. We are able to speak to each other. We're able to understand one another better. And all these emotions that were getting into the way, now that we have understood the role that emotions have to play when it comes to the way that I talk to you, the role that emotions have to play when it comes to decisions that I even make about myself. For example, if I am broke, it means that when I come to work, the only thing I'm thinking about is how am I going to make money? So everything else goes out the window. The fact that I need to say hi in the morning goes out the window. The fact that I might need to, check in on my boss and how she or he is doing goes out the window. The only thing I'm focused on, how many clients can I sell today? And even when I'm selling to those clients, I'm not really listening to them. I'm just trying to think, can you just agree to this sales so that I can make some money? So some of the things that we find grow when it comes to investing in human-centered leadership is when people feel valued, when people feel seen, when people feel heard, they in turn value the organization. They in turn want it to work better. When teams feel valued, they feel seen. That's the same thing that happens. So we find that we cannot ignore the case studies that show that when we do this for business, we actually, as we spend on it, the return on investment is actually a significant one in favor of the business. So when we speak about all training, what are the costs and why are they so much? The truth is, even if they are a lot, the returns that you get are even more significant than if you don't invest in something that makes our work cultures more and more transient, more aware, our culture that is more aware, that defines values that actually speak to clients and to employee centricity, as opposed to just chasing values of integrity, compliance, targets and goals, and forgetting the softer side of nature. So where are we going with this emotional economy? And that can be a slide that Rose can also share. The future trends show that actually, because of just how important emotions are, we are finding ways of putting this emotion reading even into AI and into technology. That's how fundamental and how important emotions are. That we have tried to find algorithms that tell us that when people text this way, it is because this is the collective emotion that they have. When people refuse to buy this, it is because this is collective emotion that they have. So we are putting in a lot of systems, a lot of data, a lot of collection of data. Our languages, even now, if you tell Google, give me a professional tone, it gives you a professional tone. Sorry, not Google, ChatGPT. Write to me this letter to this person saying this, and give it a professional tone. It knows the words to use. And give it a friendly tone. And give it a funny tone. It knows the words to use. And you can imagine that's just the beginning. Understanding how you can integrate emotional intelligence to devices and to softwares so that they can interact with consumers as if they were actually humans. It's just like ChatGPT. Every time I finish something, it tells me, you're very welcome. Please let me know when you need me again. It's a very small thing, and I smile. I'm talking to a machine, but my experience with a machine is a pleasant one. And most of the time, pleasant emotions, they tend to broaden and build us and want us to engage further. Can you imagine if the machine just, after this given me everything, it just keeps quiet? Yeah. After it gives me a sentence, it tells me, would you like me to rephrase one of the points or expand on one of the points? It's being helpful. And I'm like, yeah, actually, I would like you to do that. And then it does that. And it even gives me two versions. And it tells me, which one do you like? Yeah. So it's playing to my sense of autonomy as a human being. When I feel forced to take something, it's not a pleasant emotion. So the other thing it does is that after it's done, it saves everything and then tells me if you'd like to copy, this is what you do. If you'd like me to also look through this topic, which you seem to be writing a lot, I can do that for you. So my experience with ChatGPT is amazing, whereas sometimes the experience with another human being might not be that amazing because of, okay, I've brought my emotions today, I'm tired, I'm just wondering why the hell do you want me to write your report at this particular time? I can only write one report. And even after I'm done with the report, I just say, thank you very much. Is there anything else I can help you with? But sometimes we do have the same human beings who say those same sentences, and we feel it's better to work with them. So if you think about just that, the emotional economy, the trends that we're seeing in the future, which is the incorporation of EI, and mining data of how people are feeling, using our systems to be able to define, to talk to people like, they were actually people, then you just begin to understand just how much, yeah, emotional intelligence really is important. Yeah. And so understanding your emotions, being aware of your emotions, now more than ever becomes paramount. It becomes a necessity because that is where we are now. Everywhere we turn, our emotions, the little captains of our hearts, are being tagged either by an advert, by our children, or whoever it is. And really, the superpower is in being aware of how we respond, being aware of our actions, our behaviors when we feel these emotions. And that's the only thing that after you're aware and you've been investigated and you've come to understand, that's the only way that you start to really understand why you behave the way you behave and sometimes why that doesn't work for you, and you anchor it back on your why. So one of the things that Victor and I offer is the ability to check how you show up with the general assessments that we have. And this is a simple tool that will allow you to check yourself through the 6 competencies of emotional intelligence. And those 6 competencies are very simple. Self-awareness. How self-aware are you? You can get feedback from the people around you on how self-aware they see you are. And the questions around here are, do you demonstrate an awareness of the emotions you feel? Do you speak? Do you say, actually, I'm angry right now. I don't think I'm going to make these decisions. And people start to recognize that you're very aware of the decisions that you take. I'm sorry, of the emotions that you have, even before you take decisions. So thinking about also the awareness of others. How do you score when it comes to how aware you are of other people? Not just by the way you say, me, I know I'm a very self-aware person. These assessments help you understand because you get other people to rate you, not yourself. You get to understand when it comes to authenticity. Am I really authentic? This thing that I keep hearing people talking about authenticity, and I think I have it, but am I really authentic? Yeah. When it comes to self-management and the way that I make decisions, am I consultative? Do I take my emotions into consideration when I make decisions? Do I show this to the people I'm working with that I'm actually thinking through on the emotions that I'm feeling, and that's why I'm putting a stop to this particular decision? So these are all things that we need to measure, and I think Victor mentioned it as we walked in and said, this is the era of data. Every business is using data to make its decisions. This is the era of really finding out how can I better show up where I am in the places that I influence. Why? Because if I do that, I am guaranteeing myself that in the future of work, I have a space. If I cannot deal with human beings, if I cannot be innovative, if I cannot work with others to come up with better solutions in this ever-changing world, then my value is going to change. And the people that will work in the future and that will succeed in the future are people who have skills such as emotional intelligence. They're high in emotional intelligence, they're aware, they're self-aware. When they have challenges, they know what they need to do about them. The guys who are constantly reading, relearning, and figuring out how to get better at these skills, core skills, people skills. And they've always been there. But now that AI is taking over a lot of the functions that we had, especially transactional functions, then we find that the human skills will actually be really, really important. And I think it was one of the presidents of Google who said that with the advent of AI, what remains is how we are to each other, how I'm able to speak to my boss, how I'm able to collaborate with my teammates, how I'm able to serve my customers so that each and every time the client experience that they have, not just the product, but even the people that they meet, makes it a lasting opinion. Because I said, if a chat bot can give me that experience when I'm just talking to them over the internet, then imagine how much more a human being can. And with that, I want to say thank you for listening to me, and I will hand it back to Victor. Thank you very much.
Whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Thank you so much, Vicky. Thank you. Thank you. Sincerely, that was quite insightful. Personally, for me, I think the one I find very, very personal, which I know we think about it, but sometimes when you have a mirror put to your face like that, it gives you more need to reprocess what you've been reprocessing. And that's the core question is everyone is seeking for your attention. If everyone is seeking to leverage your emotions, how much more you, the owner of emotions, what are you doing with it? What are you really doing with your attention? So I want to open up to the room. Thank you. If you think this has been value, I think an appreciation would do. Asma, I see you in the room. You can drop a kind words. This for me has been quite valuable. Asma, Emeka, Idika, Femi Ogunlaya, Frank, Nzi. Right. Yes, let's just have a kind word for Vicky for truly very short, powerful, punchy. Femi said didn't keep track quite a lot. Truly, really, that was quite a lot. But then you raise your hand. Okay, thank you so much. Anyone else who want to just drop a word for Vicky for some very, very, very insightful appreciation of what emotional economy is all about, laying that foundation and going further to it. Vicky, before I even ask them to make one or two comments, okay. Femi says, great presentation, very insightful. I want to ask you one popular question that has always been coming up most times when I discuss with clients and organizations here, sometimes in Nigeria. And the questions has always been, what exactly is the difference? You know, when you have, what do you call it now, Google? When you use Google to set up a couple of questions here and there, what's the difference between just a Google question, survey, and then the real meaning of what you call an assessment that is scientifically backed? What exactly is the difference? Because most people have been asking that question. Please provide insight to that.
Okay. So a Google question formulated by you is exactly that, just a set of questions. And you can ask any question. I can ask Victor, are you thin or are you fat? And depending on where Victor is at what time of the day Victor is feeling, Victor can decide today I'm thin or tomorrow I'm fat. And also depending on his level of self-awareness. So how self-aware is Victor on whether he's thin or fat? But I could ask Victor other questions around whether he's thin or fat. I could ask him, what's your circumference? I could ask him questions like, what's your BMI? There are other questions that I can ask around, and then I can tell him, I think, Victor, you're fat. You know, I just didn't ask the question of, are you thin or are you fat? And there is the difference between psychometric assessments and just questions that you ask. I can't just go and ask Victor, do you think you're bold? Victor, depending again on how self-aware he is, or even the time and circumstance, maybe he's just had a fight with his wife, so he thinks he's bold, and he puts there, I am bold. And those are the kind of questions we tend to put on Google because we don't know the art of asking questions. And there's a whole study that has been dedicated to the art of asking questions. So when you put together a questionnaire and you say you want it to measure certain behaviors of people or even certain trends of people, the first thing any psychometrician will do is check the quality of your questions, which we don't do. You go to Google, are you fat? Are you bald? We just ask, we say, I want to find out whether these people liked this course. Did you like the course? Chances are that, after a course you've just been inspired, you say yes. But what of the course did you like? How much of the course content did you take? So the questions and the quality of the questions themselves first. We don't know how to create good quality questions because we haven't studied the art of asking questions. It's just like if you go to a high school and you set a math paper, there's an art. People have been taught how to set maths papers for people who study mathematics. So psychometrics are a science, and people study that science to great depth. Why do they do that? One, because asking questions means that you have to eliminate bias. How do you eliminate bias? Yeah, my own personal bias from my cultural background, from my personality background. So how do I eliminate bias? That these questions are also fair, that the kind of language you're using is fair to the individuals receiving them. That these questions, after we check the answers, we can actually see that they are asking for information they wanted. Because I could be wanting to ask Victor if he's thin or fat, but then my question is around, Victor, have you been eating a lot lately? That has nothing to do with whether Victor is thin or fat. So the question itself is not measuring what we want to look for. We want to look for whether Victor is thin or fat. But we've decided in our heads that I think if we ask how much Victor eats, we might be able to conclude whether what Victor is thin or fat. And in so many ways, we do this with questions, yeah, because we think we know. So why should you use a validated psychometric assessment? The questions have been tested to ensure that they are asking the relevant, the right, the quality of the questions are very good. A second thing is they've been tested for validity. That is, do they actually measure what they say they're going to measure? They've been checked for reliability. If you take those questions over and over again, do you still get the same score? Or today, does it say you're thin? Tomorrow morning, it says you're fat. Then it says you're in between. There's no consistency. Yeah. And a lot of these psychometric assessments, they stand the test of time. And they stand the test of a lawsuit in a law court. Because if someone decides to take you to court because you made a decision, a hiring decision based on an assessment that's not validated, you can actually get sued and someone can win because those are some of the things that psychometrics have. I hope I've answered that question.
Yes. Thank you so much. And that what you've provided is quite imperative and very important for the context of what we're discussing. Because like you laid the foundation, truly assessment provides so much insight to really lead, for relationship, for leadership, as also for hiring. But for most people, there is this confusion between assessment. I can just put it together in a Google, but they are not seeing the science and the act behind the entire process. And so sometimes they take this for granted. And that is why until you understand the value, the depth of value and the size of value you get from a validated process, an assessment, you really might not be able to make the best of what assessment is all about. So thank you so much, Vicky, for that. And I don't know who wants to ask either a question by dropping a line. Asma, who will you want to share? Emeka DK Idika, please, do you want to share? Femi? And then Simon Frank Nzi. I hope I got that right. I just want to hear your voice. Just a comment, an insight, your takeaway. Did you get one thing you're living with that you're going to, add to improve progress in your place of work? I just want to, not just with comments, I just want to do that with a voice and put a face, a voice to that. Please, kindly, I want everyone, before we just shut down, please just share with us. Is this what you wanted? What you were expecting? Have you one thing of value that is going to help you improve your performance? Who wants to begin, please? Let's go.
Good evening,
Who
everyone.
wants to begin? Okay, good evening, please. Who's in the room? Whose voice am
Simon,
I hearing?
thank you
Okay.
guys.
Sure.
I've been attending most of your session with Profile International in Kenya. So you guys are doing a very big job when it comes to issues of emotional intelligence. So for me, I've gained a lot with various sessions, including this one of today. So I will just give you a praise to keep on doing this and involving more people whenever required, because emotional intelligence seems to be a big issue to most of the leaders over HR department and the others who are not from HR department. So you could push it, keep going. We will keep attending your sessions, and for today's sessions, actually, I've gained some of the more skills which will help me to keep resolving my HR issues at my workplace. So that's it from me.
Okay. Thank you so much. That's quite encouraging. Just like what Vicky was sharing, that sometimes you talk to ChatGPT, you get to get some level of friendliness, some level of feedback that seems to encourage you to do a job rather than even a human being sometimes, simply because of that emotional intelligence gap. And basically, just giving us this feedback is encouraging. It's emotionally intelligent in by itself to just, encourage and give that pat on the back to say, look, keep pushing and keep doing well. We also want to ask you to, Frank, that please, as much as possible, thank God you've always been part of this process, enjoying Profiles International, who has been at the forefront as the brand to push emotional intelligence, which is the next phase of the power skill for performance. As much as possible, please try to reach out to others to whisper to them the journey of emotional intelligence. Tell them how important this is in their performance, how important having a human-centric, focus will even drive profit in an organization. So that while we're doing this and presenting this on our own end, on your own end, anyone who is in your community, let them also know, just like you have established, the importance and the value of emotional intelligence. Again, I say thank you for the kind words. Who again will want to share, please? I want everyone in the room to drop one line or the other. Please, it's just an awareness of what we have learned, the impact, and also the value. It helps also in, keeping the process and the journey going forward. Who else wants to drop a kind word? Do you understand so much about emotional economy, the basis, the importance of it, the use of it, and how best you can refocus, especially with a case study from India here, looking at how do we make our process human-centric. I know I have a program coming up soon called Human Magic. And what basically has been Human Magic is looking at how the goal, how do we start paying attention to the humanity of a process, of a system, so that while we recognize technicality, enable humans to perform more and bring more value to the table. So who wants to share quickly, please? In a minute, what
Good,
do you want to share with us?
good evening, all.
Good evening.
This is Femi speaking from Abuja, Nigeria.
Oh, Fabio Gule, thank you so much for
Yes,
joining, and kindly drop your words, please.
you're welcome. To Madam Vicky, thank you so very much for your session. It's very insightful, as I said earlier on. This is my first session with you guys, and I'm glad to say I'm not disappointed, really. And I think we are dealing with a very topical issue, which unfortunately has been overlooked over time. Yeah, like you said in your presentation, sometimes we forget that we are human beings, and our emotions really drives everything we do. You made a very valid point when you said when it comes to advertisements, they have been able to tap into our emotions to get us to buy things, and that is very true. And that is very true. I'm also in that space, interestingly, and I completely agree with what you have said. Now, in the workplace, which is very painful, most organizations forget that the emotional and mental stability of the employee is extremely important. They treat employee like a tool to be used, like just the way they treat a computer. They forget that they have feelings. And I say this because about 3 months ago, I did the HR consultation work for one of the PFAs in Nigeria. And you could see them very disgruntled. There's a major disjoint between management and staff. And it all shows up in the way they talk to them, in the way they treat them. And sometimes we feel that it is by just increasing the salaries that make all the difference. I don't think so. It's not about salary increase sometimes, probably the environment that makes all the difference. And it's going to get worse. Why am I saying it's going to get worse? With the advent of AI and then maybe robotics and stuff, I'm afraid that we are losing more and more our humanity. And we are not being seen as a component of production, as a component of production. And once they are done with us, they just toss us in the bin. So it's part of the conversations I think we should be having globally. It's part of the conversation we need to be having more often. It is a conversation that we should not be scared of speaking up for. Because I can assure you, a lot of people don't like what they are doing at work, not because they hate what they are doing, but because the environment is toxic. And that's why I'm very happy that this conversation is going on. And Madam Vicky, once again, it's very nice hearing from you. I'm meeting you for the first time, and I'm very glad that you touched some very key points. I hope to hear more from you in most of your sessions coming up again. That's just my position right now. Thank you, sirs.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Beautifully enough, you rose through the ranks in the banking sector. You did a lot of, work there, even at a senior level. And now you're really giving yourself to transformation, to values, and to building people. I'm glad that you're seeing with the importance and the value of emotional intelligence. Like you said, the challenge is the realities that is there. And that is why this is very important. I'm also counting the fact that we will discuss and possibly also expand this a little bit more, just so that you can reach out to your community to see how best. And I'm even looking at the possibility of discussing and having a way where you experience the assessment and you get to see the power in it, especially for your programs, values and transformation. You see so much power and the quality of data one can get and how it will provide so much insight into what happens in the discussions of transformation, coaching, leadership, all of that. So I'm hoping that partner more often and we partner more and then see how best we can leverage on this even in the project you do. Just so much so much so that we make people get access to this. We believe that the more people get to understand this, then the more the organization will improve, because it's a very simple, baseline. Most people don't know, they are not aware of the value and the importance of emotions and how it affects productivity, how it affects performance. Because give and take, everyone, whatever the organization, their key thing and focus is they want to improve their, return on investment. But if you really get to understand that emotional intelligence properly, deployed is going to help you achieve the same thing. So at best, you're going to deploy that to get the results we want. But the idea is that they really get to understand that this exists, not only that it exists, how it can be used, when and how it should be used, then eventually we'll get the result from there. So despite the challenges, we're hoping that as we push this further with partnership and support from people like you, we will get better results. That's what we are looking at. Any last word from, I know Hajara was in the room, Hajara, Asmao, Emeka Edika, who again? Who wants to drop one or two last words before we leave? The whole idea is just to see this as a commitment, because everyone in this room, at least I know you're a coach, HR experts, and I know most of you are doing quite a lot within your field. So this is not a matter of just what you use. It's just not one of those one-time experience. is what do I do with this going forward? That's the key question here. As a coach, as a consultant, as a corporate facilitator, as HR expert, what do I do with this knowledge? What do I do with this insight? Now I understand the value and importance of emotional intelligence. But going forward, for myself, for my team, and for my clients, how can this become very important? How can I use this knowledge and insight and improve performance for them? How can I use it to even improve performance for myself, my own business? That is the way, the point we're looking at it from. So it's not a signboard approach of, okay, this is good, I think they need it. No, they need to use it when they understand it. No, it's about what do I do with it? What can my organization do with it? How can I deploy this and improve my own performance? That's the perspective I'm looking at it. So when you see me call you out to respond or to make an input or make a commitment, is because I know that you have striving business in this line. So the question now is, how can emotional intelligence, how can the general assessment improve your performance? That's what I'm looking at to, bring us, some more value to what we've heard today. So Asmao, I want to take one or two kind words from you, and there's Emeka Idika too. Emeka Idika. Okay, if you're not ready, Asmao. You're a coach, and I know that this matters a lot to your circle. You know that. And please, any word from you. And please note, I'm not putting pressures. If you're not comfortable, you can just drop a chat, and then that's okay by us. Any? Okay. Now, Asma says, excellent conversation. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, every one of you, for joining. But before we leave, Vicky, do you have any last word? Any last line you want to give us? Any last line from you, Vicky?
No, not at the moment.
All right.
I just want to say thank you so much for listening to me, and have a lovely evening. For here, it's good night.
Okay. Thank you so much, Vicky. Thank you for always being there. Thank you for championing this. Clearly, the amount of mental health issues that seems a lot of them can be handled if most leaders, most CEOs, most HRs understand how best to deploy emotional intelligence into the system and into the process, not just only from the perspective of a return of investment, but also from the perspective of just having a good health for the workforce, for them to be able to be in the best position to improve performance and bring value to the table. So thank you so much for doing this. And I do know that, like Femi said, a lot of people may not be aware of this, but as we discuss further, and I believe that as we even get commitment from those in the room today, to be able to go out, share it within their community, the need, not just the need, the urgent need for emotional intelligence, and how best to leverage on the entire component of emotional economy and make good results out of that. I believe as much as possible, this will spread. And after a while, we'll gain that kind of speed that will now, permit the entire workforce and the system. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Next month, we're going to have another topic to discuss. And if you have friends for which you think they need to hear this and you think this will be valuable, please just drop a chat. We're going to send you a link for a replay so that you can share to your friends and to your circles for which they can make, the best of. And for everyone in the room who wants to leverage and take advantage of the assessment, please, chat me up. Let's see how best we can, help make it possible for you to experience this firsthand and see the power, the value, and the depth of what this assessment, especially the journal's emotional intelligence assessment, how it can help you as a person perhaps with that experience, you can now step out into your community and really let them know that there is something that will give them that leverage, that advantage to performance, ability to understand themselves, to come to the point where they really understand how the issue of how we affect them, not from the place of just opinion or a friendly comment, but from a very scientifically backed process that will help them become better leaders, better consultants, and the rest of them. Always share sessions with Simon Frank, okay, at gmail.com. We will, please. And also want to ask a commitment that as we share sessions, let it reach out to your larger community. At least, even if for nothing, one of the gifts we can do, every good leader is a generous leader. You need to understand that. And part of the gift of generosity as a leader is when you see what works, if you see what is good, you make sure your community sees that. Otherwise, you will grow and leave your community behind. And this is why we're hoping that even for the few of you in this room, this also can spread to your community and to immediate, environs or your influence group. Thank you so much. And thank you, Rose, also for being at the back end, making sure that we are getting the best of the slides and the best of all the technicality required to run this session today. For every one of you that joined us, thank you. Again, my name is Victor Prince Dixon. I hope we connect further and take this discussion even offline and make the best out of it. Take care, God bless, and have a very, very beautiful night.